Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. First offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Terry Suffredini, and she is the engineer's coach. She helps engineers figure out what they want with their careers to be and then helps them develop a plan to make it happen. I look forward to speaking with her about her motivation to become a coach, the lessons she's learned throughout her career, and the ways in which public speaking has benefited her. Welcome to Teach the Geek interview, Terry.
Hi, Neil. Thank you for having me on.
You got it. First question. I noticed from the little bit of research I did on you that you studied chemical engineering. What was your motivation for that?
That's kind of a long story. I know you've had somebody else on your podcast before, Mel Butcher, who had a similar kind of experience. I actually started out in home ec and stumbled into chemical engineering. So I don't know if we have time for that story today, but it was never a real plan. But once I got into it, I found that I really enjoyed it. And there's so many possibilities of what you can do with an engineering degree, and particularly with a chemical engineering degree, that it meant that I would always be able to support myself if and when I needed to.
Wow. So. Did you say home ec?
Yes, I did.
I didn't even know you could study home ec in college.
Well, it was actually a major called clothing and textiles. And, life happens while you're making other plans, right? I originally was interested in becoming a buyer. And I wanted nothing to do with science. That's the only thing I knew when I was trying to figure out a major is, science and I did. So I was looking around, and I thought being a buyer for a clothing retail store sounded like fun. And normally somebody would advise you to go into business marketing if you had that kind of interest. But the person that I talked to steered me towards a major called, and there was a clothing and textiles major that happened to be in the home ec department, and only 4 universities in my state, which is Texas, carried it at the time. So, I said, okay. And I got about a year and a half into it and realized that when I started getting to the meat of the courses of that major in my beginning of my sophomore year, I realized, no, this is not where I need to be. At that point, I had to take chemistry for that major. Found out I liked chemistry. It suddenly started to make sense. And so that made it fun. And then I thought, well, I think I'll go into chemistry. And that's when someone steered me to chemical engineering, because they said it's actually my father talked to me, and he said it's a more versatile degree if you're interested in chemistry than straight chemistry. Straight chemistry is great if you are really introverted, you're real detail oriented, you're real research oriented, you want to be in a lab or doing that kind of stuff typically. Whereas chemical engineering is application of chemistry concepts, but on a larger scale. So, out in the real world. And that was a real good call on his part. I would not have been happy in straight chemistry. And the irony is he was a chemistry major himself. Although he never used it as a chemistry major. He ended up in a management type track, and so he was running chemical plants and that sort of thing. So he kind of knew what he was talking about, and for once I listened to him, so I guess it was a good thing. And the interesting thing is that once I switched into that major, it was a real hard thing, because I was coming from a non-science major into something like engineering, and I had to play catch up with math and physics and all that, so it was very difficult. My grades did not stay as high as I was used to having them be, but I never again considered at once changing majors, despite the difficulty and the long hours and lack of social life and all that goes along with being an engineering major.
Yeah, so. I hear you. It's funny you said that you were thinking chemistry first, and then your father was the one that said that chemical engineering was probably the better option. I actually studied engineering because my father told me to.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, whenever I hear other people tell their stories about why they got into engineering, they were good at math and science in school, and maybe they were on the robotics team, and then the chemical or engineering was just a natural progression. No, I was I good at math and science? I was okay, I guess. But it was just my father that said, do engineering. It's the most stable career you can get, which is just an undergraduate degree. And back in those days, I did everything he said, so that's why I ended up in engineering.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
And the other thing it brings out is the importance of good teachers, because I had a very bad experience with chemistry in high school. I got an A in the course only because the teacher graded on a huge curve. And when I say a huge curve, I mean, I took one test, I remember getting about a 40 on it, and it was an A because everybody else did worse. So I didn't really understand it in high school, and that's one of the reasons why I said, no, I must not be cut out for science and chemistry and that sort of thing. But then I got a different kind of teacher in college who made it interesting, and suddenly I got it. And you know, it makes all the difference, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So from the bit of research I did on you also, I noticed that you are a professional engineer. What was the motivation for becoming a PE?
At the time, particularly because I worked for a government agency, and when you're working for the government, anybody that's worked for the government knows that they pay on a scale. They've got a grade that they go by, a chart basically, and you have to fall on a certain place on that scale, or as you fall on a certain place on that scale, that's determines your pay. Now, with the state, you cannot call yourself an engineer without your PE license. You're an engineer in training, and therefore your salary is considerably lower. So there was a real high incentive when I was working for the state to go ahead and get my PE license. Out in the commercial world, it was not such a big draw, but it has helped me over the years. It's been a good thing to have that where others didn't. And nowadays it's becoming much more common and much more encouraged for all engineers. So,
okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. I worked in medical devices, and when I learned about the PE, I just did it as a challenge.
Yeah.
It was because no one I knew in medical devices has their PE. So just like you said, you know, I guess outside of government, perhaps it's not as common as in, you know, within government. But you know, I don't regret going for it myself. So you know.
Yeah, it makes you more marketable, even if you never have to use it. For example, I can't stamp anything these days because I got my PE and really doing environmental consulting. And so at the time I could stamp documents because I understood that arena. But then more recently, I switched into the design side of things, completely changed really my career once again. And in that area, I don't feel competent enough to stamp anything yet at this point. So it's really, hope nobody that would hire me is listening. That useful. But it looks really good, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, and from all the jobs that you've had and leading to the one that you have now, what's the number one lesson you've taken from the previous jobs that have informed the current job that you have?
You know, I think the number one lesson is you really need to go for what is right for you, to go for the career that really makes, to use a woo-woo kind of term, makes your heart sing. I mean, it makes it fun to get up in the morning to go to work because it's such a big part of our lives. And if we're not enjoying what we're doing, well, we're not going to be happy and we're not going to be as productive as we could otherwise be. So it helps everyone when we're doing something that it's really a good fit for us.
Yeah, that's a pretty good lesson.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I ended up in coaching, because so many people are in the situation of not enjoying their work. And I know I learned how to make the transition, and that can be a difficult thing. When you've been in one field for years and years and years, that's all that anyone really wants to hire you for, unless you can show them another way to think about you.
Yeah. So, you know, I mentioned even back in the intro that you're the engineer's coach. So at one point you were working, and at one point you decided, I'm going to become a coach. What was, I guess, the light bulb moment that you made that transition?
Well, I still do work as an engineer, but I got into the coaching side again because I found out, I learned how to transition. I said it several years ago now, I switched from the environmental arena into the design side, actually doing what I call real engineering. Before, you just really kind of had to know about it, but you didn't actually do the engineering work. So making that transition was a huge leap. I basically had to start all over. I was drinking from the fire hose, from day one when I did that. So that was like after 20 years in one field to switch to another area was a huge transition. And I needed to do that in order to get into an area that I felt was a much better fit for me, that made me enjoy my work again. So learning how to do that for myself and then realizing how many other people were caught in the same circumstance, the same situation, and I could help them. That's what helped me get into coaching.
So as the engineer's coach, what type of services do you provide?
For many years, what I have been focusing on is helping people in their job search, particularly engineers. I claimed, the engineer's coach because it's, we think a different way, don't we, Neil, than that it seems to be than the average person on the street. So I can speak the language of an engineer, whereas someone else who is not an engineer might not be able to. So coming into that area, I just felt it was something that I could uniquely help people with. So I got into the career side. I'll tell you a secret, and that is most people's resumes, including engineers, most of their resumes are not helping them in a job search. So first of all, being able to show them how to craft one that actually markets them effectively. We have to learn how to market ourselves. And most of us engineers, or most engineers, think of sales and marketing as the devil's spawn, right? We want nothing to do with that sort of thing. Right. But when it comes time to put ourselves out there to get hired, especially in a tighter market where they're not coming to you, you have to go out and actually do the work and look for it. You need to know how to show yourself properly. You need to be able to basically brand yourself and use the marketing techniques. And that's what I show people, and how to craft their resume so it speaks for what they want to be found, what they want to be seen for, how to improve their LinkedIn profile so that it presents them well as helps them get found for what they want to be doing, and then how to network effectively. So that's what a lot of what I've been doing. My focus has been shifting, or I'm shifting my focus now to, I still do some of that, but I'm really interested now in helping women who are trying to navigate this world of, a male-dominated career. And there's so many things that that I've learned that I can help other women with. So that is becoming my focus now. And part of that will be if they want to transition within that world, helping them with the resume stuff, the LinkedIn profile, all that stuff still fits in. But I'm just aiming my focus towards helping women to really thrive in their careers.
So the coaching that you do, is it mostly one-on-one, or is it group coaching, or both?
It's both. I've been doing a lot of one-on-one, and I'm gearing up now towards doing more group coaching because I can help more people that way. When you do one-on-one, you're limited, by time constraints of how many people you can actually help. With groups, they can be, much larger, so you can help more people. And I'm finding that there are a lot of engineers, a lot of women out there that need the kind of help that I'm trying to provide for them. So the other thing too is, with different individual versus group, you've got different price points. So some people, might not be able to afford one-on-one, but they can do the group coaching, or they feel like they can't afford, so it gives them some options to choose from.
Yeah, you're damn right. They feel they can afford. Engineers make pretty good money.
Yes, but it's a stretch. It can be a stretch, to believe that we can invest in ourselves like we should, So, that's all part of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So something you said kind of piqued my interest. You said, after 20 years of working in one field, you moved into design. And so, at least personally, and even in the in the case of people that I know, making that kind of transition from doing something that you've done for quite some time into something else can be quite difficult. Not just because perhaps you don't think you can do it, but companies may not give you the opportunity to do that. I mean, if you've done something for quite some time, other companies just want you to continue doing that thing. So
Right.
what kind of advice would you give to somebody who actually wants to make that transition, but is having difficulty convincing others that they can?
Well, that's exactly what motivated me to get into coaching, is because I figured out how to do that. A lot of it is first recognizing what it is that you bring to the table. What are your strengths? What is it that you have that are transferable skills? You know, and once you know what it is you want to get into. And another thing that helps is to get involved in various organizations, get involved in various groups, be out there among people. I actually got my opportunity to switch because of someone I had helped previously in a job search. They had an opening at their company for a process design engineer. And he said, "We're hiring, we need people, why don't you apply?" And I said, "Well, I haven't done this." And he said, "Well, you know, I'll talk to our process manager and, you know, see if he wants to go ahead and give you a shot." So he took, and he did. So I was very fortunate that that process manager took a chance on me. He's become a very good friend, and we've worked together for many years since, in the years since. And he told me, he's since told me that when he gave me that chance, he said, "You know, I figured I'd give it, you know, 6 weeks, 3 months and see how you do, you know, and I could always let you go if it didn't work out." And fortunately, you know, it did. So, you know, but you got to have somebody that will give you the chance. But usually oftentimes it's going to take knowing someone to help you do that. So you have to know how to get out there and find those people who can help you make that shift.
Yeah, for sure.
As well as making sure that you're highlighting the transferable skills on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, you know, so they start thinking about you for something other than what your most recent job was. So because most people's resumes, right, they start with the job history, right? So that's all everybody's going to think of you as. If you start with something that demonstrates your skills and what you've done for, you know, in your jobs, then they can see that maybe they can think of you for something else.
After spending that much time in one field and moving into another, I'm assuming that you built up quite a bit of seniority just doing something for quite some time. To move into something else, did you have to kind of start at the bottom? And if so, what was that difficult to do?
It wasn't. I didn't have a problem with that part of it. I was so excited to get out of the other field that it was okay. And I was still making an engineer's salary. And yes, I wasn't making as much. You know, and everybody's situation is going to be different. In my case at the time, I was married, so I had somebody else that was also helping to provide income. So I could do that. But still, again, and I had been working part-time more recently prior to that switch, and now I'm going to full-time. So it actually was actually a higher income than what I had been getting for a while. So it really, you know, it all worked out for me in my case. But still, you know, there is so much value in being in a place where you feel like you belong. And that makes up for a lot of income, at least in my world. When you want to get up in the morning, when you enjoy what you're doing, you like who you're working with, you know, that can help you put up with for a while maybe a little bit lower income than what you're used to. But then you want to, you know, have a plan to build it back up as quickly as you can. And that's, you know, that's the other part of it, is having your goals in place and working towards where you want to end up.
When you mentioned, when I was talking about, you know, having that senior, I wasn't even thinking about pay. I was just even thinking about, you know, as you go on in a career, you get more, not, what's the word we're looking for? I guess more of a leash, I guess. You're not being micromanaged after 20 years. But if you go into something new, that very well might be the case, because people don't trust you because they know that this is something that's new to you. So I always just thought that perhaps that might be something that was difficult to deal with, if at all.
That can be. I was fortunate in that particular case at that time that I got someone who loved to teach. And I was like a sponge. I wanted to learn. So I didn't feel micromanaged. It was fine. The other thing is, after working that long, you bring experience to the table that a true beginner does not have. And that experience is worth something, you know, the perspective. And I mean, like I said earlier, I struggled as an engineering student. I could go back now and take those same courses I know for a fact without knowing the material, and I could probably ace the classes just because now I have real life perspective on things. You know, when I come in as a new green young student, you know, it's kind of overwhelming and it's too much for me and all that. But now, you know, you're older and you go, yeah, it's just book learning. I can learn that. So it's the same kind of thing. The guy that hired me has since too. He said, I had a hard time figuring out what salary to pay you because you weren't really a true green beginning engineer. You were new to this kind of work, but you had a lot of other experience. So, you know, it was kind of a balancing thing for him. So, yeah, it works out. You know, the important thing is to go for what, you know, I think it's always looking for your purpose and living your purpose, and you can manage a lot of things when you know what that is.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I guess we can move on to the public speaking portion of the presentation. It's kind of like, you know, from beauty pageants, we're moving on from evening wear to swimsuit. So when it comes to public speaking, has that been something you've always been good at? And if not, what have you done to get better at it?
I don't know that anyone ever starts out being good at public speaking, and I don't believe that I am the best. However, I've heard it said that, you know, before you can be great at something, you have to be good at it. And before you can become good at it, you have to be bad. And then before you can be bad, you have to start. So that's kind of the approach that I've taken. So every time I do a talk, I see it as an opportunity to do it better the next time. And when I'm talking about something that I'm passionate about, it actually takes away a lot of the fear. I don't know why. I don't particularly have a fear of public speaking most of the time, although I know it is the #1 fear. And my temperament is such, you know, I laugh at myself because my temperament is such that I tend towards fear, or at least I did when I was younger. I'm much better about it now. But for some reason, the #1 fear that everyone has was not a problem for me. So now I still don't want to get up in front of a big crowd and, you know, make a fool of myself. But it's the idea of you're there to serve the people that you're speaking to. So when I take the focus off myself and put it on what can I do to help them, it makes the whole experience a whole lot better.
You know, when I've asked other people if they're always good at public speaking and how they got better at it, the majority of people are like you. They say, well, you know, I wasn't always like great, but this is what I did to get better at it. But every now and then there's somebody that says, no, I've always been pretty good at public speaking. But I guess based on what you said, those people are full of shit, right, Terry?
Well, I won't accuse them of that, but you know, they may be afraid to tell people the truth because maybe they're afraid of looking bad. You know, I'd rather tell people what it's really like. So, you know, I'm not trying to hide it. You know, I want them to have confidence in me. So sometimes I might not tell them that is the very first thing, but you know, if you're around me any length of time, I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
So,
full of shit it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
I guess my process is, well, I'll tell you what it's been. I'll tell you what it is going to be going forward. It's been finding out, you know, knowing what the topic is and then drawing out an outline of what points do I want to convey on that topic? What do I want them to take away? And then I build my talk around those points. Now, what I have been doing is developing different talks for different groups. And now I'm going to shift to do what it makes everything a whole lot easier. Find one topic, become like a politician. You know, whatever they ask you to speak about, you take to that same topic, you know, that same stuff. But it's going to be general enough that you can do that, right? Because like when I speak to women and how to thrive in a male-dominated career, you know, you've got to deal with things like being more confident, being assertive, not aggressive. You got to deal with the imposter syndrome. You got to deal with a lot of these things that most everybody deals with, you know. So you can take those concepts and twist them, not twist them, but shift them a little bit for just about any audience. So then you can get really, really good on your talk because you do basically the same talk over and over again. You can improve it each time as opposed to writing a new talk each time. So that'd be one big tip that I would recommend to anyone who wants to be a speaker, is try to get to one kind of signature idea and talk that you do.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. You're not recreating the wheel every time.
No, I know you're not. And you should really, you get to be really, really good on that. And then, you know, once you're really, really familiar with it after having given the same basic talk, you know, then you don't, of course, the fear, it helps with the fear because you know what you're going to speak about. You know, people can ask you questions. You become much more relatable, all those things. And it gives you the opportunity to make it more fun, you know. So it just makes all life a whole lot easier. And you can jump, you know, at the last minute if somebody has an opening because a speaker had to cancel. And even the best speakers, sometimes things come up and they have to cancel. They're not being, you know, it's not just because people are irresponsible. But then you're available as somebody who can jump in at the last minute. That's a very valuable resource for people that are looking for speakers.
You had said that you don't get that you don't have a fear of public speaking, but do you ever get nervous before a presentation? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
You know, I think the only time I get nervous is when I'm in a completely new situation and I don't know what to expect. Or I think if I was in a room full of higher, that I might start having an inclination might be better than me, you know, quote unquote. You know, like you had a room full of CEOs and you are not at that level. Now, the way you get beyond that is, again, to focus on the audience, focus on serving the people that you're speaking to. Take a deep breath and then, you know, try to relax a little bit and then just do what you know you're good at and help the people that are there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. And, you know, it's funny how you mentioned, you know, being in front of a group of CEOs and thinking you're not at their level. A lot of the time, or at least when I think about that, I wouldn't want to be a CEO. It seems like a really all-encompassing job. Yeah, you know. So,
well, the truth is, you know, well, we've heard the line, you know, everybody puts their pants on the same way. They've got their own fears and insecurities and issues and all that, just like everybody else. So yes, they've reached a high position. And, you know, there's good CEOs and there's not so good CEOs. So just because somebody has a certain title, you know, by their name, it doesn't tell you everything about them.
For
so,
sure.
Yeah, we're all people. And it's amazing to me over the people like that who are in very high levels. And they are such ordinary people, you know. They just happen to have a certain skill set that they've developed over the years, and it's helped them rise within their business.
For sure.
So I have a brother, in fact, who's a CEO, but you know, he's my brother. He's just like you and me. So.
Absolutely. So I mean, this has all been really great, Terry. So when it comes to getting better at public speaking and even putting presentations together, putting an outline together is really helpful so that you address the points that you want to make sure you get to. Having takeaways is important too. You know, developing a signature idea and so that you get more confidence being able to give it over and over again. Are there any other tips that you could offer that would help people in becoming more effective in public speaking?
I think keep it from being boring. You know, I was listening to a seminar yesterday on a topic of cybersecurity, which to me is a very interesting topic. But I felt like the entire thing was such an engineering type talk. I didn't really absorb anything because it was not made interesting. I think you make it interesting by telling your stories. Tell your stories so that people can relate, and then tie your points to those stories. I think that's the best way to make your talks memorable, to make you more interesting to listen to. That's the biggest thing, is tell your stories.
You're very right when you say tell stories in just keeping people's attention. And, and when I first started giving presentations, just when I was an engineer, that was definitely not something that I thought about, and I didn't even think it would be appropriate, because
Right.
a lot of times when you're an engineer, you're presenting data and facts and that type of stuff. And when you're, at least when I first thought about it, stories is for kids. It's like, that's not for presenting in front of senior management. But if you want to keep people's attention, it's not as if when you became an adult you stopped liking stories. Stories are really good in just keeping people's attention and engaging with others.
Right. I heard a woman give an example the other day. She's someone who teaches people how to give good presentations. And she had one guy in her group say, well, I speak on OSHA regulations. How do I make it interesting? And her suggestion to him was, think about what happens if you don't follow those regulations. Tell a story about someone who went to work one day and basically didn't come home or came home injured because they didn't follow these regulations. And then you can talk about your regulations. So you can take even what seems like the most boring topic and tell a story that will make it interesting and bring the point home so they remember it. Because if you do something like that for things like a regulation, people are going to remember. They're going to remember that story you told them about the person who didn't come home from work because they didn't follow, the safety things that were in place to protect them.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention about things that you're working on, Terry?
Just that if anybody listening is interested in maybe getting some help with their career, and you're not where you'd like to be, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you about it, see if I might be able to assist you, or if not me, steer you to somebody who can. So if you need to reach me, I don't know if you're going to put my contact information in with show notes or anything like that, Neil, but you can just reach out to me and just email me, and we can set something up.
Yeah, and that's Terry at theengineerscoach.com.
Yes, and engineers has an S after it, so yes, theengineerscoach.com.
Wonderful. Well, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. I have a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. Again, that's teachthegeek.com to learn more about that. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Neil. Bye, everybody.